Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sunday's edition of Weekend Waypoints, a production of SEC Extra and D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy. We're going to take you through Saturday's absolute gem of a pitcher's duel between LSU and Coastal Carolina. The Tigers came out on top, winning Game 1 of the CWS Finals, putting them just one win away from their 8th program national title. Before we get into anything else, got to remind you that this episode of Weekend Waypoints and every episode of Weekend Waypoints is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. The sun's out and the fun is on at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Score a cool pool, savor summer flavor with a grill, prep for fishing weekends, or mount up with a new mountain bike. However you have fun, you can't lose with our top brands. Gear up online at academy.com or at your local store. All right, folks. Well, the pitcher's duel last night was every bit as good as we could have hoped for. And anytime you have a marquee pitching matchup like that, there's a little bit of worry that it's just not going to live up to it, right? I mean, that just happens. That's baseball, especially at this stage where, the teams are good and pitchers have thrown a lot of innings. The scouting reports are as good as they're going to get. It's easy for that not to go the way it went, but it was awesome. Obviously the big story is Kade Anderson with a complete game shutout. And doing so not in total domination, right? He called the outing not pretty, which I would disagree. Like, I don't think it obviously was not that bad, but he felt like it wasn't up to his standard, and he did hit some guys and walked a handful, and that's usually not what he does. But I think that was even more impressive that he just worked around everything. And my colleague Aaron Fitt wrote about it last night. Just that specific thought that, like, the result was dominant, but what was more impressive perhaps was the way in which he navigated everything that came at him during that start, because Coastal did a pretty good job putting guys on base. Like, it wasn't like, and they didn't have a lot of 1, 2, 3 innings. And yet it just didn't matter. Like, they just worked around him, but he got some help from his defense. We'll talk about that as the show goes on, but and then Fluky matched him largely pitch for pitch, right? I mean, 6 strong innings. Dominic Carbone comes out of the bullpen and he was great. Like, 99 times out of 100, maybe even 999 times out of 1,000, that effort is good enough to beat just about anybody in the country for Coastal. It just so happens that the one time it doesn't is when you're facing Kade Anderson and he throws like that. So yeah, just a tour de force of a performance by both pitchers, and as a result, the game really moved. You looked up and it was like, oh, okay, we're basically done here, huh? So anyway, loved seeing that. Loved that it went the way we thought it could and hoped it would. Let's get to some comments. We got some folks who hopped in early, and then we'll get to some more details about the game. We'll look at the box score. We'll talk about tomorrow's game a little bit, today's game. Carl Dunn says, what a game by Anderson. He might have sealed the number 1 pick. He might have. I'm sorry, but if that great umpire don't get in the way of that overthrow, it might have been 2-0. I digress. Yeah, just one of those weird plays. It would have been because it would have moved a runner to second, and there was a single right behind it. But yeah, pick-off throw that the umpire just couldn't. A younger umpire maybe gets out of the way of it quicker, but Jeff Head not so lucky. Anyway, yeah, it very well could have been 2-0. But so, thankfully for LSU's sake, it didn't. That game didn't get tied to where that play ended up becoming bigger than it was in the moment. Good morning, Joe. Austin Larroquette. Good morning, Joe. Good morning, Austin. Anderson with a legendary performance, even when we didn't have his A stuff. Yeah, I think it's super impressive. I think we saw that in the first inning, right? Where, I mean, the first inning, it's like a long at bat right off right from the jump, and then whatever it was, 20 some odd pitches in the first inning, and you thought, oh boy, like, it's going to be hard for him to get deep in this game. But he settled in, but B, he was just a workhorse out there. Like, there was really no doubt he was going to finish that thing once he kind of got through the 7th, and by that point the sun is down, so it's not quite as hot. Like, all that stuff came into play, and yeah, the way he navigated, I thought was really impressive. Nicholas Doherty says, got to change the hit by pitch rule, makes no sense. I agree. Actually, by the way, I agree. Based on the way the rule is written, I agreed with the call on Danny Dickinson, but I think the rule is dumb. Like, I think the rule was applied correctly, and I think the rule is dumb. Like, I think both things can be true. Yeah, it's just in the post game, Jay Johnson said it right, and this is something I've heard other coaches say is, why are we rewarding pitchers for throwing a ball, right? I would even be okay. I would even be okay if the rule was just like what if the pitch is just a ball, right? Like, because then you have situations where, okay, it's a 3-2 count, pitch is clearly like pitches in the batter's box. Okay, yes, maybe you stuck the chicken wing out there, right? But the ball's still in the batter's box, right? And so that should be ball 4, not strike 3. I would be okay with that. Like, if you really, now I really just kind of want them to do away with the whole, like, we're trying to police people sticking elbows out there. And just be a little more, just have a little more common sense about the rule. But if we're going to continue to have policing of that kind of move, let's at least make a little more sense. Let's not reward pitchers for throwing a ball, that splits the batter's box in half. That, I think that's kind of where I'm at. It seems to be trying to fix a problem that I don't perceive to have existed. Right? Like, before this rule existed, I didn't see like an epidemic of players like doing the old Craig Biggio and like trying to, basically putting their arm out over the plate in order to get hit. And look, if that was the thing, okay, let's police that. But I don't perceive that to be a thing. And if the ball is truly in the strike zone, and hey, maybe this will get easier if we ever go to an automated strike zone in college baseball. Because then we'll be able to actually tell, was that a strike? And if you're taking strikes off the board because you stuck your elbow out there, okay, then we can have that conversation. But for right now, it feels so over policed. And even if the umpires were calling it correctly 100% of the time, it still created a negative consequence, because every time a guy gets hit by a pitch that doesn't hit him like square in the back, anytime a guy gets hit by a pitch on the elbow, like on the, kind of on the side, shoulder, we go to a replay every single time. And it's just because coaches are like, well, might as well, because in real time, you can't really get a good look at it. So, I'm with you. You could probably tell because I've been talking about this for 3 minutes now, but like, I'm 100% with you that something about that rule needs to change, whether it's, hey, it's just a ball, or we just do away with the trying to police that altogether. But it can't stay the way it is, because it's just going to be it's gotten ridiculous with the reviews on every single hit by pitch. At a bare minimum, that's the problem. Joey says somebody wins 12-10 today, calling it. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I'll have to see what the wind does when we get to the ballpark, because if it's blowing in, like, and nobody getting the ball out. But that tends to be sometimes the way these things go, like you think we've got another good pitching matchup on deck. We'll talk about it, but sometimes that's just baseball, and that's the way they go. Mark S. says, surprised they lifted Fluky so soon. I wasn't, Mark, just from the standpoint of, like, I think he could have gone longer, and he was clearly effective. But I think Coastal sees its bullpen as a huge strength. And so I just think they wanted to do the thing where you take him out an out or two early instead of an out or two late. And it paid off, because Dominic Carbone was great out of the bullpen. And, now Carbone's probably not available today, but everybody else is. And so you saved the rest of the bullpen, and, you avoided a situation where it became a 2-0, 3-0, 4-0 game just because you hung on to Fluky a little bit too long. Mark S. says, people are saying Anderson's ceiling is a number 2 starter in MLB. Is that the feeling? If true, seems like a Brian Bullington pick. Why not take someone with top end projection of a number 1 starter? I have heard that, and I'm not a scout. I don't cover prospects for a living. I don't, I'm not the right guy to give you the best information here. But I do know, so I have heard that, but I also know that when you're talking about a number 1 overall pick, and if there's not a Paul Skeens in this draft, and there's not from a pitching standpoint, that if you told MLB organizations with your first overall pick, you're going to take a guy who's going to be a number 2 starter in Major League Baseball for a decade, they'd take it. Because if you look back at at first round picks, like the hit rate of number one overall picks are pretty good, but there is enough downside there though that if you told them that's what they were getting, I think they'd probably take it. Now they'd hope for more, but I think they'd probably take it there. So the fact that Anderson may or may not be a number two starter as a pro, I actually don't think would keep someone from drafting them first overall. And I think there are probably some organizations that think he could be more. And again, I'm not a scout, so my eyes can't really tell you that. But I do think this is something I learned when I worked at Baseball America is like, I always assumed before I had that job and was spending time with guys who cover prospects, that, if you're a first round pick, it means you're going to be a star. If you're a top 10 pick, it means you're going to be a superstar. And it's like, well, not really. I mean, they're just hoping you become a good big leaguer, right? So the comps in terms of player comps or where they see someone within the organization, it falls off a lot quicker than you think. Now with the number one overall pick, I get it. Like you are hoping for that supernova superstar player. But if there isn't that in this draft, if they gauge that that's not something that's available to them in this draft, then you take the guy with the floor you can bet on. And maybe that's Anderson, especially if they think he could be quick to the big leagues. So there are a lot of factors that go in. The MLB draft is such a weird animal compared to the NBA and NFL, because in those sports, it's just like, who is the best player in this draft? Because that player is going to be on our team next year, and we need him to be great next year. In baseball, it's like, well, we have to consider the money, the signing bonus money. Do we want to save some money for later in the draft? Like, how long do we think they're going to be in the minors? How close are we to competing at the major league level? It's just such a different animal. And it's one of the reasons why the baseball draft is not as big a deal as the others. Obviously, the minor league part of it is a big part of it, but also it's the only professional sports draft that I know of. I guess I don't follow some of them that closely, but when you put them in a group with the NFL and NBA in particular, it's the only one of the three where you don't just draft the best player, number one overall, right? So it's weird in that way. All right. Yeah, Mark mentions Jeff Head got in the way of a likely LSU run. He sure did. Like I said, maybe a younger umpire gets out of the way. Justin Corbell says on that hit by pitch, intent matters. Dickinson wasn't trying to get the base on a hit by pitch. It was a 3-2 count. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you, Justin. Like the fact that a 3-ball count, like to me, it's just like a walk, like whatever. Like, so I'm with you. Intent matters. And that's why we're putting these umpires in a tough position. If I could be empathetic to umpires for a second, which I know is not a popular take, but we're asking these replay umpires to determine, did Danny Dickinson drop his elbow 6 inches because he's trying to get hit, or is that just part of his natural movement to spin away? Who knows? Like, how could we possibly tell? And that's what we're asking umpires to do. And so that sucks. Nicholas Doherty says, I know this LSU team, I assume is really, really good, but this isn't the Cruz White lineup and they're still having a lot of success. Crazy how baseball works. 100% agree. This lineup is not as scary as that one. And yet, right, they're one game away from winning another national title. And that first inning to me is so, I have in my notes here to talk about the run they scored in the first inning. And to me, that's like a good illustration of effective baseball. That's not what it was, not the same as what it was a couple of years ago for them, where, you lead off hitter Curiel gets down 0-2 and then he works a walk. So it's a good at bat there. Ethan Fry grounds out, but it moves the runner. And then you get Stephen Milam has his doors blown off by 2 fastballs. And then the next time he gets a fastball, he times it up and hits a single for an RBI. Like, that's just an example of like good offensive baseball that doesn't involve having, Tommy Tanks up there or Dylan Cruz up there, 2 guys that were just monsters. Just hitting the ball 110 miles an hour. There are a lot of ways to get it done, and LSU's done a really good job getting it done with a lineup that, and that's not just me saying that. You talk to coaches and they're like, yeah, this lineup's just not as scary. But the results have been that team won a national title and this team is 1 win away from it. So it's definitely impressive. All right. Let's see. Jeffrey Stockstill says, it seems in the World Series the home plate umpire is calling more check swing strikes instead of asking the first base or third base umpire to make the call. I think I agree. I always like to check when in doubt. So I'm always going to be in favor of that, and rather than the home plate umpire just calling it themselves. But alas, like that's been true for my entire lifetime, and that hasn't changed at all. Take a sip of my coffee here. We're back to crappy hotel coffee. My goodness. Kelly McNary says LSU defended Coastal's bunt game well. Also, the overslide at third base hurt Coastal. Yeah, two huge plays, Kelly. You're exactly right, or two huge things. They did a fabulous job on the bunt game. There was a sack bunt attempt where early in the game, Kade Anderson does a good job hopping off the mound. Michael Braswell does a good job anticipating the play, where instead of just kind of a lot of third basemen, when you have a bunt that gets pushed kind of between third base and the pitcher's mound, a lot of third basemen kind of freeze, like because they're just trying, they're not anticipating. But I think Braswell saw Kade Anderson pick his head up to see where the runner was. And when he sees that, he retreats back to third base. Just a really good intuitive play by Braswell. So they get the force there. Later, Braswell makes a play on a bunt where I don't know how he makes this happen, but he charges it, picks it up, and he somehow manages, because by the time he picks up the ball, he is basically right behind the runner. And he somehow gets the throw over the shoulder of the runner, but without sailing it to Jared Jones. Now, Jared Jones is roughly 8 feet tall, so it's hard to sail a throw to him, but to get it that close to the runner without hitting him and then getting the out, really, really impressive stuff there. And then, Sebastian Alexander, a slide into third base, just a little bit aggressive with waiting too long to slide. He slides past the bag. He actually juked Braswell the first time. He got away with it the first time, but then Braswell got the tag on the second attempt, and huge plays there. Kind of helping. And when we talk about Anderson working out of trouble, like he did get quite a bit of help from his defense, and that's it definitely was something that needed to be brought up. Notice how I talked about how bad the coffee was, and I keep going back to it. Got to get caffeine somehow, I guess. Let's see. Daniel Ordoin. Joe, hear me out. A review has to be clear and obvious, right? Well, at least by the letter of tell me how a video can show clearly that a player intended to get hit by a full count ball in the batter's box. Exactly. I mean, that's the point I made. It's like we're asking umpires to figure out what someone meant to do with what they're doing with their elbow, and that's bonkers. All right. Oh, Skip is on the way to Omaha, according to Carl Dunn. It will be good to see Skip Bertman out at the ballpark today. Clint Nada brings up a good point. This is interesting. This lineup is actually better than the 2023 one in situational hitting and awareness. They just don't hit the long ball. I'd buy that. That's a really good point, because we've talked a lot about Coastal's ability to do that, and Coastal does it well, and they rely on it more often than LSU does. But it's a good point. Like in terms of moving the baseball, as they say, they're better than the 23 lineup. So it's a good point. In a game like the one we had yesterday, you needed that version of a lineup. And maybe if this is the 2023 lineup, maybe it doesn't matter because, that lineup was just so good. But if they needed to do that, I'm not sure the 2023 lineup would have done that as well. So it's a good point. Marquez says, as a person very familiar with Louisiana accents, Anderson's accent is incomprehensible. Mom and dad sound like Madisonville, Louisiana. He sounds more North Louisiana. I'm baffled. We need a column on this. Well, if you write it, Mark, we'll run it at D1 Baseball, like a breakdown of Louisiana accents. I believe says this team has a better record than the 23 team as well. Interesting. I didn't realize that. All right. Couple things. Because I also have to go do the live show with Runes and Aaron and Kendall here in just a minute, and they'll be waiting on me if I wait too much longer. The pitching matchup today, Anthony Ianson, y'all know what he's about. It's good velocity. It's a great breaking ball. If he pitches up to his peak, LSU's lifting a trophy today. If he's not, then we've got a ball game, because Jacob Morrison is on the other side. And he is just about as good, like has a chance to be a big leaguer as well. It's fastball heavy. Morrison loves his fastball. He's a big guy, 6'8". So Fluky's big. This guy's bigger. So it's coming down at you. He gets a lot of chase on the fastball up in the zone. So that's something that LSU is going to have to lay off the fastball kind of, letters high, because that pitch is it's going to look like it's at the belt and it's going to end up at the chest because it just kind of carries through the zone. So you're going to have to lay off that. You're going to have to see that ball down a little bit. Not as much whiff on the breaking ball as Fluky. Fluky's a little more whiff dependent, and that's a double-edged sword. So if you're Fluky, if you're Coastal, you like that Fluky can get players to chase on the breaking stuff. We saw that yesterday. He got a number of strikeouts on, buried breaking balls, but Morrison lands his stuff for strikes. And so that can be a positive too, because if you see breaking ball, you might give up on the pitch, and then boom, Caden Bodine's able to stick it in the zone with his framing, and that's how you end up with strikeouts there. So it's just kind of a different, not better or worse, just different approach with the off-speed stuff for Morrison versus Fluky. So stuff is still really good. It's still going to be a tough day at the ballpark offensively for both teams. Wouldn't be shocked if Joey mentioned a 12-10 game, maybe, but also wouldn't be surprised if it's another 1-0. So it should be a lot of fun. 1:30 local time to start, 2:30 Eastern. So it gets a little better prime time spot here. And also, if you're someone who's following the NBA Finals, it also will be over in time for you to also watch the NBA Finals, which is not an accident, right? Like the College World Series, they're smart. They're not, and they're both on ESPN, so they're not gonna counter program each other with the College World Series and the NBA Finals. That would just be silliness. So anyway, 1:30 start local, 2:30 Eastern. Hope you guys enjoy the baseball. I know I will. We'll be back. Max says, who you got today? I guess I should think about this now, because I'm going to get asked on the live show with the other group. So I probably ought to think about this now. I kind of think I think LSU gets it done. Like, I think Ianson's going to be on his game. I don't think as good as Morrison is, I think there'll be a little more offense in this game. And then I like LSU there. So Tigers in 2, I guess, is my prediction there, but would not be shocked if I'm back here tomorrow morning talking about game 3. I wouldn't be shocked if that's the case either. So, and speaking of which, regardless of result, I'll be back tomorrow morning. I'll either be talking about an LSU national title, or we'll be talking about a tied series going into a game 3 on Monday night. Either way, looking forward to being back. Thank you for joining me live. Thank you for all your questions and comments. I love that part of it. That's my favorite part of it. I'll be back tomorrow morning. And until then, enjoy the baseball, everybody.